Good day and welcome to our May 3rd Tuesday at 3 webcast series event, The High Cost of Low Adoption. My name's Alan Falcon. I'm the CEO of Cumulus Global, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day and week to join us here either live on this session or watching the session here and the recording on demand. Do appreciate you joining us and hope you find the content today informative and helpful for you as you look to better manage and utilize your IT and cloud services. Before we get into the meat of the presentation today, I always do a little bit of session information, a bit of housekeeping, a reminder that the audio is muted. This prevents any background noise from getting in the way. So if you have a question at any point in time, you'll notice some icons along the top or right-hand side of your screen. One of them opens the questions window. That's the best way to get a hold of me. It lets me track to make sure we've got all the questions answered over the course of the webcast or during the Q&A session at the end. As with all of our webcasts, this session is being recorded. We generally post them within 24 hours on the website. We'll send you an email with a link. Please feel free to share with acquaintances, associates who you think might find our content valuable. And just a reminder that the webcast series and recordings are posted in our resource center. We've got a number of other great resources, including newsletters, a library of ebooks and white papers, access to our blog, and our Coffee and Clouds series of webcasts, which are shorter in duration, a little bit more topic specific. And if you sign up and register to view one of those webcasts, either live or on demand, you have the option of requesting a Starbucks or Dunkin' gift card. We'll send you one physically in the mail as a thank you, so the coffee's on us. That said, let's dive into the topic at hand here today, which is the high cost of low adoption. And our journey through this topic today is we'll start out by looking where we are as small businesses when it comes to adoption of cloud services and our utilization of services we have and sort of what that means going forward. Then we can look at some other issues around redundant services and define a path forward. So let's start with where we are in utilization. And the first thing we see when where we are is where do small and mid-sized businesses, SMBs, use the cloud? And for the vast majority, the entry point is the productivity suite, whether it's Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. Why? It gives us our emails, our calendars, our contacts, basic file sharing, the ability to edit documents, the ability to hold meetings and to have that, your voice or video conferencing, and the ability to have that chat and messaging going back and forth. And we step into that productivity suite and we get very comfortable with it and we use it. And, it's different, depending on, which one you pick. So in the Microsoft 365, you can be entirely online with sort of limited capabilities in your editors or using the desktop Microsoft Office applications tied into your 365 account. Google Workspace, we've got a number of clients who live and breathe and thrive using nothing but the Google editors, the web interface online. We have others who still will get Microsoft apps for business, the locally installed software, and still do some work in Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc., using Google Drive and Gmail as your communication and your file storage tool. So there are a number of ways you can get into productivity using 365 and Workspace. What we also know is that 10 to 15% is the typical utilization of features and capabilities in Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace by small and mid-sized businesses. And what this tells us is most of us go into Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. We make sure we can schedule meetings. We can make sure we know how to email and do attachments. Maybe we're using OneDrive or SharePoint file services or shared drives in the Google Workspace environment to share and manage files strategically. Maybe we're not. And possibly we're using Teams for meetings or Google Meets for meetings, but maybe we're still using Zoom. And so we're not necessarily using all the capabilities or even some of the advanced capabilities that show up, some of the built-in AI to help with authoring, identifying confidential information, managing security. There's a lot there that quite often small and mid-sized businesses don't take advantage of. And part of that is because we get comfortable with what we know and what we think we need to do our work effectively and don't take the time to explore other capabilities that can make us more productive and more efficient. And other times we just don't know it's there, or we have another service we're using for it, even though we're paying for it here. And a great example of of where we see underutilized capability is in calendars. The two most often used features are personal calendars. Everyone has one. They schedule their own appointments. They manage their invitees, who's accepted, who hasn't. It'll sync to their phones. They'll have it with them. It's great. And conference rooms, the ability to set up a conference room so that you can book it and other people know the conference room is busy. And even on top of that, people who put in Teams hardware or Google Meet hardware into their conference rooms, knowing that if you book a conference room, you're one click away from audio video conferencing in that conference room in an integrated fashion. So those are the often used features. But where we see underutilization are other opportunities. So for example, most people at small and mid-sized businesses don't use the find a time capability. And that exists in both Microsoft and Google worlds. It's the ability to effectively get a grid view of all of the attendees you're inviting to your meeting and see when they're available. And maybe even in a Microsoft side, it'll even suggest the first available time that everyone's available. We also see people, we're used to using resource calendars for conference rooms. There's an opportunity to use resource calendars for other capabilities. So for example, working with a landscaping company, most of their crews have a standard set of equipment on the truck, but then they have specialized equipment, seating equipment, aerating, trenching equipment, etc. They're actually using resource calendars for those different types of equipment, so crew chiefs can book and reserve the equipment they're going to need on a specific date for a specific job. We see team calendars. It can be used in Google Workspace. It can be used great in Microsoft Teams, where everyone still has their personal calendar, but you create a team calendar for the project or for the team to use to manage common meetings, track deadlines, a way of including outside folks. It all comes into play. Another great feature, there's a pop-up there on the screen, is using out-of-office and focus time. Particularly with remote work, in hybrid work environments where people have a need to block time to get work done where they're not interrupted by meetings or not being scheduled for meetings. Whether they're out of the office or whether they just want to say, hey, Monday morning from 9 to noon, it's focus time. Now, I personally use focus time on Monday mornings, which gives me time where I know I'm not going to be interrupted, where I can get into the office, review my to-do list for the day and week, get myself organized, take care of anything I need to before I dive into my weekly team meetings and dive into the day, right? And again, it's an underutilized feature where you can block off time, manage your time really well, and work. And this feature is actually something that's really important to the Gen Zers, because if they're working a day, but they're working in the morning and taking a break and working in the afternoon, and you can accommodate those flexible work schedules, being able to mark themselves out of office or to set aside focus time lets individuals manage their time in a way that makes them most productive without, and gives them a way to avoid conflicts in doing so. So it's a great feature and it's generally underutilized. Appointment scheduling as well. If you use Calendly to let people request and book meetings with you, you know what appointment scheduling is. That capability is built into both Microsoft 365 and now calendars within Google Workspace. You don't need a third-party tool. You have the ability, in fact, in Google Workspace, you can have multiple types of appointments scheduling that you can share out and block that time and let people self-book. And then both Google and Microsoft now offer time insights, which give you a little bit of a view of how you're using the system and what it comes into play. And so here's calendars, some other cool features, particularly now that we're in a hybrid world. In Google Workspace and Calendar, you can indicate your work location, whether your home office, you don't want people to know, somewhere else, you can customize those as well. And the right-hand screen there, you see Time Insights, which is a way that people can assess how they're working, how much time they're spending in meetings, what type of meetings, are there, how many meetings have been requested and they haven't responded to, et cetera, and really let people get a sense for how they're spending their time and how their productivity is. And so we take sort of a look at the current work and even the evolving work culture about, where personal time management and individual, if not control, at least influence of how we manage our time to be more efficient. Combining tools like Time Insights, out of office, focus time, really gives people more power and control to, you can really empower themselves to manage their time so that they work most effectively in a way where that's communicated with their managed supervisors and managers. It's communicated with their peers in a way that doesn't become, gee, I'm trying to schedule you at noon and I sent the meeting invite and you never responded. Hey, focus time. I have lunch and I go for, and I work out. And so my lunch is 12 to 2. I start earlier or I stay late. You can block that as out of the office or focus time. The rejection's automatic. The person can even know why if you want to share that as part of that setup. And so underutilized features that really help people manage time and improve productivity. Some more examples, if we look at email, and here are the screenshots are on the Google Workspace side. These capabilities are in Microsoft 365 as well. We still see a lot of people sending documents around as attachments instead of sharing links. And I know I might sound, maybe I shouldn't, I might sound a little exasperated with that, but it's like, come on, folks. One of the advantages of cloud is you can share by link. You have one version of the document. You have one record, one source record or source of truth, if you will. You can allow people to edit. You can allow people to comment or suggest edits. That is the owner of the document. You can then accept or reject. You can allow other people to accept or reject suggestions as well, depending on the level of permissions you share. And it creates more efficiency. Years ago, when we first started doing cloud, we actually did an analysis, is if you wrote a document and you needed feedback from 4 people, what happens when you send it as attachment? And we actually counted the number of copies of the document end up attached to the sent email message, the one that ends up in the inbox, the fact that people have to save it locally, they make their edits, you have to reattach it to an email, send it back. And you can have, with 4 people editing, you can easily end up having 20 to 30 copies of that document floating around on people's individual machines and on your network server. It's a mess. Shared links, 1 copy of the document, very efficient. You can track who's gone in, who's done the work, who hasn't, who you need to follow up with. And so that's, even today, we sort of take it for granted. It's an underutilized capability. Similarly, you've got simple inbox versus inbox layouts. In both the Microsoft and the Google world, you can customize the inbox. There's some default. There's a pop-up here in the upper right corner that says, hey, I want to have my, in my inbox and everything unread. And I'll have a second section that's everything that's read. So I can see what's unread up top. You can do unread and important, unread and starred. There are multiple options. And really, it lets you sort your inbox by priority, importance, favorites as far as topics or people that you need to communicate with, versus other things such as just the labels you assign. And having that ability to reorganize the inbox lets you effectively prioritize your work. A lot of people now use their inbox as a to-do list. You've got the capability to visually sort the information in your inbox in a way that directs you to what's most important and leaves what's less important off to the side, but still accessible to address when you have time. Also on the email side, we talk about retyping versus templates, both Microsoft and Google. Here's some screenshot on the screen on the Google Gmail side. The ability to take a draft of a message and save it as a template to avoid the retyping over and over. If it's a common type of message that you or your team or someone needs to send. And again, it just saves you a little bit of time. But if you don't know it's there and if you don't know how easy it is to set up, you're never going to take advantage of it. And we actually talked with one organization that wants to send personalized emails to follow up on the quotes they send. They're doing about 20 weeks, 20 a week. They figured it was taking them 3 to 4 minutes, to type up each email. We showed them templates. And, their feedback is they were saving an hour to an hour and a half a week for one person on just that one type of email. And they started using templates for other types of email as well. The impact became noticeable and helped them be more efficient. And so there is a productivity dilemma. And this is sort of where we see and how most small mid-sized companies who've adopted Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace end up, right? You've got your existing environment, your pre-cloud environment, if you will. and you're sort of chugging along at the status quo, and you make a change, right? And because you make a change, there's a dip in productivity. You have to log in differently. The user interface is a little different. Where the documents are stored might be a little different. There's some features there that you're told you should use. So you want to use them, so you got to learn them. And effectively, in that new system, when you move to Microsoft 365 or when you move to Google Workspace, you figure out, how do I do what I did before? And that just gets you back to the status quo. The problem is, going forward, you don't ever go beyond that status quo. And so the question I ask is, are you here, right? Are you there? At some point in time, you moved into the cloud, you had the productivity hit as people figured it out and they learned how to do what they did before. And now you're there and you're not getting more value out of the cloud. You're not using tools to be more efficient and more productive. You're just leveraging the environment to do what you did before. And that's sort of the dilemma. What you really want is that orange curve. You're going to take that initial hit no matter what, but you want to see your user productivity and your team productivity climb to a point where you gain efficiency and benefit from the investment in the move or the change that you've made by going into Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. You want to be better than the status quo. And that really takes a phased program, right? It really requires education, training, and support, right? Those three things. And people need to understand what's there, how to, what you can use to be more efficient based on your role and how you work, the training to know how to do those things that you're told you can do, and then support if you have questions. And if you can provide the support, education, and training, studies have shown that individual productivity within Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace can be as much as 60% greater. That's significant. Your people feel more empowered and better able to do their jobs. Your teams operate more efficiently. Your business can get more done. And so if you're here, you just want to point out that it's never too late to bring in the support, education, and training and improve that productivity over time. Right? So even if you haven't thought about it, there is a way to take a step back, look at how you're using Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and take the necessary steps to continue and improve productivity. And so we talk about getting set or support, education, and training. There's some things, because in the workspace, we're adults, and so we're adult learners. So it's different than, hey, you're a student, let's go to class for a day, right? You don't want to overwhelm people with too much information. One of the least effective forms of training is to say, hey, we moved to Google Workspace, we're going to do a one-day workshop, attend the workshop, you'll be all set. There's too much there. Too many things are thrown at you. You're not going to relate that to what you do on a day-to-day basis. You're not going to practice in your environment with your day-to-day tasks. And so you're overwhelmed. And so maybe you pull one or two things out of a day where you've been exposed to 50 or 60. Maybe you're able to apply them and work. You also want to start with the familiar. Hey, here's what you know. Here's where you're at. By the way, they're incremental things. Ideally, when you provide that education and training, it should be geared towards an individual's role and relevant to what they do on a day-to-day basis. So if you have folks who never need to organize video conferences, you don't need to spend much time training them on video conferences. Show them how to join and participate in the video conferences start by other folks, but they don't need to know how to organize and configure a complex Teams meeting and breakout rooms and fun stuff like that. They're not going to do it in their job. But if there are things that are in their job or could help them with their role, that's where you want to focus. And with all this, you want that learning to be continuous, right? You want it in little chunks that people get as ideas on how they can use the tools more effectively as they're in their role, as they're doing their work. Teach them something manageable and small. Let them practice it. Let them try to use it. See if it works. If it does, great. If it's not, you haven't really wasted much time or any time, and continue, then send them the next tidbit. And really with that and sort of that constant, hey, every X number of days or weeks, we're going to, share something with you that might help you use the tools more efficiently and help you feel more empowered to be productive and effective. You, by expectation and by action, you create a culture of learning. So people want that and they see the value and the need and the benefits of continuing to learn and grow and develop their capabilities. So that brings us to other aspects of the journey, right, that we see, which is redundant. And I'll get into what I mean by redundancy, but then what is the path forward for us? So we talk about redundancy, we're really talking about redundant services and specifically redundant cloud services. And recent studies have shown, multiple studies have shown that the percentage of small businesses with redundant cloud services is more than 85%. So let me define what we talk about when we mean redundant services. It means you are paying for or using two different cloud services that provide the same function. And there are a number of examples we can dive into. Some of you might say, hey, that's me when I go to the next slide, right? The best example is in meetings, right? You have Google Meets in your Google Workspace environment. If you're running Microsoft 365, you have Microsoft Teams and Teams Meeting. Those offer audio and video conferencing options. Both offer ways, some, depending on your licensing, it's included or it's an add-on to have people who aren't at a computer be able to dial in and participate, and they don't have the app on their phone. They can, you can let them dial in using a normal phone number and participate in an audio conference, even though everyone else is video. Depending on your licensing, you've got noise cancellation, breakout rooms, side chats, other host controls, the ability to live stream, a whole range of capabilities. And yet, even with that capability built into your productivity suite that you're already paying for, companies still then pay for GoTo, for Zoom, for WebEx, for other video audio conferencing services outside of it. And when we talk to small businesses and why do you do it? Well, during the pandemic, Zoom was free, and people liked it. They're used to it. Excellent. That says, hey, what if you train them to use the capability you're already paying for? Might you be able to get rid of it? And granted, there might be specific uses and specific instances and use cases that require the third-party app, but the vast majority of us don't need Zoom, GoTo, or WebEx. We can do what we need to do in Google Meets and Microsoft Teams. And another point I'll note, they'll say, well, gee, our licensing, in Google Workspace doesn't have a feature in Meets, Google Meet that I need, and I can pay for Zoom and have it. The reality is, in almost every case, it would be cheaper to upgrade your Google Workspace license than it would to buy a separate Zoom license. So depending on who needs the feature and how many people need the feature, you do it. The other exception or objection we get is, well, our clients prefer Zoom, or some of our clients prefer Zoom, or they're used to it. Great. You use Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, whichever's in your environment. If your client or the other party says, well, gee, we're really used to and really only want to use Zoom, you say, great, you can schedule the meeting with your paid account. And we've had customers start, doing this. And lo and behold, some of their clients will then start scheduling the Zooms using their paid Zoom account. And others will say, no, don't worry, just use what you got, right? We're fine, right? They don't want to be hassled with it. And so there's a way to manage expectations and sort of that negotiation of who's hosting the meeting and what tool you're using. Most small businesses don't need to be paying double. So when we look at other examples that are similar to meetings, it's people paying for Slack, even though they have Google Chat or Microsoft Teams. Now, granted, Microsoft Teams is very robust. You've got channels, you've got capabilities. You can embed files, you can integrate third-party apps. Really powerful. Google Chat, you've got spaces, you've got threaded conversations, different options, not quite as mature. And you can probably find features in Slack that aren't available in Google Chat and Microsoft Teams. And maybe some of the other application integrations that you might need aren't there. But if that's not the case, there's no need to be paying for Slack if you can use Google Chat or Microsoft Teams effectively for what you need. Similarly with Calendly, I mentioned it earlier, right? With Microsoft bookings and Google Calendar appointments, you don't necessarily, chances are you don't need to be paying for Calendly and be paying for multiple folks on or everyone in your company to have that add-on to the environment. And what's the impact of this redundancy? So, you take an organization that has Microsoft 365 Business Premium or Google Workspace Business Plus, and they still go out and pay for Zoom, Slack, and Calendly, those 3 tools. Not an uncommon trio. Well, depending on whether you use the entry-level paid version or the most popular paid version for small businesses, for each user that has those 3 tools, all 3 of those tools, you're paying between $233 and $500 per user per year for those 3 tools, for capabilities you're already paying for in their Microsoft or Google Workspace licensing. And on top of that hard cost, you've added 3 additional vendors, 3 additional applications to your IT stack. You've got license management, security, support, admin console work that needs to happen, integration work, and settings that need to happen for identity management and login. There's an operational cost that's, more. It costs more to run 4 things than it does to run 1 operationally. And so the impact's even greater. And so when we look at it, we were speaking a couple of weeks ago with a small business, about 22 people. All 22 people had Zoom, Slack, and Calendly. And they were at that most popular small business tier. So 22 people times $500, it's a lot of money to the company over the course of the year. And analyzing it, they realized that, there was only actually 1 person, no one needed Slack or Calendly, and only 1 or 2 people needed to maintain paid Zoom accounts. And so they were able to cut their costs significantly on an annual basis. On the other hand, they did provide training so their teams and their people would know how to use the tools within the productivity suite. So another example of redundancy is file servers. We still see people, we have people on Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 who are maintaining local file servers or network attached storage on their local area network. And when you do that, what are you managing? You're managing hardware and operating system, antivirus protection, should be next gen, by the way, backup and recovery, possibly even business continuity. It has to be on protected power. It should be in an area where there's reliable air conditioning and humidity control. So not just sitting out in the open, it should be in a closet or a room that's got those capabilities. And to connect it all, you've got more network infrastructure. And if you're going to have a local file server, then you need a local Active Directory or some sort of domain or LDAP server to manage access and security on the network. That's a lot. So the impact of having local file storage is capital expenditures with respect to servers, disk arrays, power racks, cablings, AC, etc. And your operating expenses, such as your OS licensing, the antivirus, your backup and recovery, system and network admin, and monitoring services if you're working with an MSP. And it all adds up to a lot of money. And so we talk to people and say, well, gee, if you've got Microsoft 365, you've got Microsoft 365, you've got OneDrive for personal storage. You can also use that to share. You've got SharePoint with the web interface. You've got SharePoint file services, which you can access through the OneDrive client that look and feel like a local file server, but are administered centrally. And then you have Microsoft Teams, which also has a file storage component. Groups is out there too. It's less commonly used these days given Teams, but you have these mechanisms that you can provide easy access to personally managed storage, where the individual user controls the permissions, or administratively or centrally managed storage. On the Google Workspace side, My Drives is the personal storage, Shared Drives is the shared storage, and now in Google Chat and Spaces, you have the ability to create file stores as well, in a way that's sort of comparable, generally comparable to a certain degree with Teams, and that level of sophistication. So you have those capabilities to do that work. By moving those files into the cloud, you save a lot of headaches, right? You not only do you not need all of these, capital expenditures and ongoing expenses, but you improve access, right? You don't need someone to VPN or do remote desktop to a physical machine or to a terminal server, VDI environment that's built in with many servers, or a server in your office or a gateway in the office for people to access files on a local file server. Instead, it's in the cloud. You need a browser and an internet connection. You can access the information. If you're mobile, remote, from your laptop, your desktop, whatever you work on, put in the OneDrive client or the Drive for desktop client from Google, and you can access and have that cloud file storage look and feel like your on-premise file server. Users don't necessarily need to. There's benefits for them to know the difference because there are additional capabilities, but they don't need to know. They can be more efficient that way. In addition, your cloud environment, generally it's going to be more secure than your on-premise environment. You're protected because the built-in redundancy of Microsoft and Google Cloud protects you from things like natural disaster outages. You can have geographic redundancy fairly easily. It's a highly secure environment. You're not tied to, hey, is the physical machine in my physical workspace running, and is it actually physically and logically accessible? And so moving file servers into file services is a great opportunity. Okay. Now, what's the path forward? Path forward, I want to introduce Brainstorm. It's actually not anything new. It's something we've worked with a lot on the Microsoft side. In the next couple months, we'll be rolling out Google Workspace product as well, and version as well. What is Brainstorm? It's an integrated learning system. It's self-paced using videos and downloadable cheat sheets. That also offers a guidance mechanism where on a periodic basis, maybe weekly or every other week, your employees get links and suggested videos that run anywhere from 1.5 to 2, maybe up to 4.5 minutes that can be geared towards their role and responsibility and the type of features they use. And that guidance provides a mix of, hey, you use Word. Did you know you could also do this? Or here's the easiest way to do watermarks or some other more advanced feature. But it can also be, hey, here's a capability or an app that's in your productivity suite that you might not be using and might not be aware of that could be relevant to help you do your job more effectively and efficiently. And you can have that in. What's nice about, one of the reasons we like the Brainstorm platform, and in addition to having preset videos and preset learning paths based on skills or job roles, we have the ability to upload custom content for you as well if you want it. So we've had some clients using Brainstorm that, as the people progress through getting hold of the basics, they're like, gee, we want all of our documents to look a certain way. So let's do our own video about how to set that up and how to use our templates rather than the default templates. Excellent. They did a screen capture recording. They're able to load it up. They can add it to the learning paths, or they can share it out as general knowledge or to specific users. And so it provides that learning mechanism we talked about earlier, that lets people learn in little chunks, use it in their job, reinforce what they've learned, and move forward. So what's the action plan with all of this? As always, start with assessing your environment and your needs. How are you using cloud today, right? You've got your productivity suite, Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, or maybe you don't, we should get you there. But assuming you do, are you just using it for email, calendars, and contacts? Nope, you're also using it for documents. Are you using it as your primary file storage and sharing mechanism, or just for certain things that need to be shared, or only certain teams are using it? What's the level of utilization of those capabilities? And we've got tools that we can help you analyze what that is and what that looks like. Are you using some of the more advanced features, chat, messaging, video conferencing? Have you mapped out and set up permissions and standard way of using shared drives or SharePoint file services? Are you using any of the value add like Microsoft Bookings or scheduling? Have you shown people? If they're not doing it, you're underutilizing the tool. And the question isn't just turn those things on or tell people to use it because they are there. It's like, we're part of that. How you're using cloud is, can you use those? Would using those benefit individuals and benefit your teams? The second part of the assessment is reviewing your IT services for redundancy. We'll help you do that as well. I'm sure for most of us on this, webcast or watching, taking this on demand and viewing it on demand, chances are you have some IT services that are redundant. And granted, there may be a use case that warrants it, but if not, then you've got an opportunity to provide some training and shift people off and reduce your license counts, reduce your spending, simplify your environment, reduce the breadth of support that you need to run your business from an IT perspective. And with that review and of how you're using cloud and with the IT services, you can then define the value proposition. Looking holistically at IT services, would helping your team and your individual staff members be more effective and efficient and capable at using the tools you're paying for, improve the operation, efficiency, and productivity of your business? Will it free up time? Will it reduce costs? And if you don't do anything, if you don't change, what's the cost of inaction? Right? Are you losing productivity? Are you losing opportunity? Do you have employees leaving because they're frustrated? And that happens. We've had clients call us and say, hey, we need to learn how to use feature X. And we're like, okay, great, we'll help you. What brought this on? And they're like, well, we hired someone new who was familiar with it and was trying to use it, and people weren't responding or joining in, and they were getting frustrated. They're like, I don't want to work someplace where, I can't use, I'm remote and I can't use the tools that the company provides to communicate because no one else is using them. Right? And so it's just, they're like, your organization is dysfunctional. I'm going someplace else. So there could be cost to inaction as well around that value proposition. From there, you plan your solution. What do you want to learn? How do you want people to learn it? How do you want to roll that out? What services or tools do you want to do it? I can tell you, we still have customers come and say, hey, we want you to do a half-day workshop or a 2-hour workshop, and that's great. We're willing to do it. The effectiveness of that learning in an adult learning workplace environment is not nearly as strong as saying, hey, let's put together learning paths or pick the learning paths that people can use at their own pace. You can obviously manage it and follow up to make sure they are doing the learning as part of the brainstorm administration side. But let's do it in a way that'll be most effective and let people focus on the capabilities that actually help them do their jobs. And then once you decide on that, we'll help you execute. So at this point, I want to let folks know if you have any questions, it's a great time to open up that questions window and ask away. For those of you watching on demand or people who are here and they have a question or they have a question later, you can contact us at info@cumulusglobal.com. Our phone numbers are on this toll-free and our standard number on the screen as well. There's also QR code and the bit.ly for CG intro call. Those will get you a link that'll let you set up a time with one of our cloud advisors. You can ask your questions that way as well. If you want to get a hold of me, Falcon@cumulusglobal.com. That's my email address. My phone number's up there. I will tell you I'm bad at answering the phone and even worse at responding to voicemail. In fact, my outgoing message says if you really want me to respond, hang up and send an email. So send me that email. I don't have an assistant. I review my emails. I will, if I can't get back to you quickly, I may have a member of my team reach out, but I'll get in the loop if and when it's necessary. So at this point, I'm going to take a moment to, before we head into any Q&A, I'm going to take a moment to thank everyone who's watching us on demand and for joining us here for our May 3rd, Tuesday at 3 or 3T webcast series event. I hope you found the content and the ideas useful and something that you can take back to your business. If you're interested in the brainstorm tool and seeing how that might work to help your team get more value out of your existing productivity suite and give you the opportunity to reduce redundancy and lower your costs, reach out, let us know. We're happy to talk, see if it's a good fit. So thanks for joining us and have a great day. I'll now stop the recording and head back to the Q&A session for those here on the live event. Thank you. Have a great day. Have a great week.